Because what's truly embarrassing is that a female senator was allegedly suspended for filing an harassment complaint instead of the complaint being investigated properly. If anything, silencing her within Nigeria is what brings shame, not her seeking justice on a global stage. Hey loves! In my previous video, I talked about why I'm not a fan of International Women's Day, IWD. One of the main reasons being that women are still facing discrimination in the workplace. While filming that video, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's speech surfaced online, and after watching it, I knew I had to come back and analyze it because it mirrors exactly what I was saying in my previous video. If you have not watched my previous video, please pause here and watch it so that you can follow through with this video. Her video is further evidence that workplace discrimination against women still exists, and it proves that the conversations around women and progress cannot just be a one-day recognition. It has to be a continuous conversation, and we need to actively hold companies, governments, and institutions accountable. What's even more interesting is that I filmed my video before seeing Senator Natasha's speech, yet her experience aligns so closely with everything I had mentioned in my previous video. This is exactly why IWD cannot be about celebrating women only, it must be about real change. So, in this video, we're going to watch Senator Natasha's speech together and break down how it ties back to the points I raised in my previous video. I'll be analysing her words, linking them back to the bigger picture of women's struggles in professional spaces, and highlighting why we need to remain vigilant in pushing for actual progress.
I come with a heavy heart from Nigeria, but first I'd like to apologize to Honorable Kathila Obara. I am not here to bring shame to our country. I'm here to seek help for the women of Nigeria. Again, my name is Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. 5 days ago, on the 6th of March 2025, I was suspended. As a senator, I was suspended illegally because I submitted a petition of sexual harassment against the President of the Nigerian Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio. I thought that by submitting the petition, he would recuse himself, and both of us will submit ourselves to the Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petition for a fair and transparent investigation. But unfortunately, I was silenced and I was suspended. I was suspended for 6 months, amongst many other stringent conditions, such as taking away my security, taking away all the officials, vehicles, and other items that were handed over to me as a senator. My salaries will be cut off. I must not appear anywhere near the National Assembly. And for 6 months, I'm not to introduce myself or present myself as a senator locally in Nigeria or internationally. That means I'm here illegally, but I have no other place to go but to come here and speak to you women. Because this is a bigger picture. This is a bigger picture. It depicts the crisis of women political representation. My suspension is not just about me. It's about the systemic exclusion of women from political leadership in Nigeria. Women make up 3.6% of political offices. And in the Senate, it's just 2.8. We have 109 men and only 4 of us are women. So right now, it's 108 with only 3 women. This is a clear case of political victimization, punishment for speaking out against impunity, corruption, and gender-based violence. The United Nations Declaration 48/104 declares sexual harassment as a form of gender violence. The Senate's actions are an assault on democracy. I was elected by my constituents to represent them, yet a few powerful men have unilaterally decided to silence their voices by suspending me for 6 months. My call for an open and transparent investigation into harassment allegations have been met with hostility instead of accountability. If a female senator can be treated this way in the full view of the world, imagine what ordinary Nigerian women would go through every day in workplaces, in universities, and other aspects of our society. A culture of harassment and silencing must end. And this is not just a Nigerian issue, it's a global one. Women in politics, media, and businesses face threats, intimidation, and violence for simply demanding fairness. From sex for grades scandals in universities to harassment in workplaces and political spaces, Nigerian women have constantly been forced into silence. We need stronger legal protections and a zero culture tolerance for gender-based discrimination and intimidation. My call to the international community is such that the world must not stay silent as democracy and women's rights are rolled back in Nigeria. I call on human rights organizations, women movements, and democratic institutions to hold the Nigerian Senate accountable. Nigeria needs global partners to push for women's political inclusion, safety, and protection from political harassment. You may ask, what are my next steps? I will resist the political intimidation. In the past few days, a number of my colleagues, my male colleagues, have reached out to me and said, Natasha, all you need to do is apologize and retract your statements. And I told them I am not going to apologize. I will not apologize for my truth. And I told them that I will stand the 6-month suspension, and the very first day I return, I will represent my petition on sexual harassment. And I'll continue doing so until there is a fair and transparent investigation. I will fight this injustice and continue to represent my constituents, whether the Senate wants to hear me or not. I will work with women's groups, civil society, and legal teams to ensure that this unconstitutional suspension is squashed. This is bigger than me. This is about ensuring that no other woman in politics or public office will ever be silenced again. Thank you so much.
Okay, so some key takeaways from Senator Natasha's speech that reinforce the issues I discussed in my previous video. The first one is that International Women's Day often feels like just words, not action. Because women who speak out face consequences. Senator Natasha submitted the harassment petition against Senate President Godswill Akpabio, and instead of a fair hearing, she was silenced and suspended. My example of women facing workplace challenges after maternity leave in my previous video mirrors Senator Natasha's experience of exclusion in politics. She lost her security, official vehicles, and salary, essentially being punished for demanding justice. This mirrors workplace realities where women who report harassment or discrimination face retaliation, including job loss, demotions, or being sidelined. If even a female senator is silenced for demanding justice, how can everyday women expect real change from IWD slogans alone? How? The next takeaway here is tokenism versus real change. The Nigerian Senate's reaction to Senator Natasha's petition is a textbook example of performative action. Instead of taking it seriously, they shut her down. Similarly, companies on IWD make bold statements about gender equality, but when it comes to actual change, nothing happens. As I said in my previous video, we don't just need words, we need policies, accountability, and measurable progress. The next takeaway is awareness versus action. In this case, harassment continues unchecked. Senator Natasha's suspension after filing a harassment complaint reveals how those in power protect abusers instead of victims. If a senator is forced into silence, how many more women are suffering in workplaces without any support? Senator Natasha was told that all she had to do was to apologize and retract her statements, and she will get her seat back. This reflects how women in workplaces are often pressured to stay silent, conform, or ignore injustice to protect their careers. Her refusal to back down is a reminder that women shouldn't have to choose between their jobs and their dignity. The next takeaway is companies and governments must take real action. Global solidarity is needed. In my previous video, I argued that IWD should push for real policy changes and not just celebrations. Here, Senator Natasha calls on the international community to hold the Nigerian Senate accountable and fight for women's inclusion in politics. This reinforces my call for organizations to be audited and measured on gender progress, ensuring real accountability. The next takeaway is that women must support each other beyond IWD. I pointed out in my previous video how women should uplift each other, not just on IWD but all year round. And here we see that Senator Natasha refuses to back down, pledging to fight for all women so that no one else faces what she has. This aligns with my message that real change requires sustained effort and not just one day of solidarity. Before I conclude, I would like to address those who argue that Senator Natasha's move to take her case to the UN and the Inter-Parliamentary Union (IPU) will embarrass Nigeria are missing the bigger picture. Because what's truly embarrassing is that a female senator was allegedly suspended for filing an harassment complaint instead of the complaint being investigated properly. If anything, silencing her within Nigeria is what brings shame, not her seeking justice on a global stage. Also, taking this matter to the UN and IPU isn't just about her. It's about calling out a larger pattern of discrimination against women. Nigeria is a democratic country, and democracy thrives on transparency, not silence. The real concern should be why the system allows such discrimination to happen in the first place, not that someone is exposing it. Some argue that the UN or the Inter-Parliamentary Union, the IPU, has no power to intervene in Nigeria's internal politics. But that's not entirely true. While they can't directly reverse her suspension, history shows that global pressure has influenced change in many countries before, especially when it comes to human rights, democracy, and gender equality. It may not be an instant solution, but it's definitely not pointless. And so I conclude by saying, Senator Natasha's case is bigger than her. It represents a global pattern of silencing, exclusion, and lack of protection for women in leadership and workplaces. This is exactly why IWD alone isn't enough. It's actions, not hashtags, that will drive real change. What we need is stronger legal protections against workplace harassment and retaliation. Companies and institutions to be held accountable for their gender equality claims. Men to be actively involved in these conversations, not just watching from the sidelines. And ongoing discussions beyond IWD to ensure we're making real progress. What do you think about Senator Natasha's suspension? Do you believe this proves that IWD is performative? Let's discuss this in the comment section. If you want more real conversations like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And that's it from me. Bye.